Okay, from bits and paper to another challenge to authority and to the way we think about our role in society. I'm not going to give Mona a huge preamble because I think her story will really speak for itself. I would just like you to welcome the inimitable, some might say a little feisty, but I'll let you decide. Mona Eltahawy, please. Ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks, Charlie. Thanks. All right, good morning, everyone. I'd like to thank Charlie and the team for inviting me, especially Anne-Sophie, who I drove absolutely crazy with the preparations before the conference, so thank you, Anne-Sophie. I'm here to talk to you about revolution and sex, so I hope you're wide awake. In November of 2011, my life changed quite dramatically. Up until then, I would describe myself as sometimes a journalist, but mostly as a writer, because I stopped doing news reporting in 2000 and started writing opinion pieces. So I was already looking for trouble for about 20 years before then. But on November the 24th, 25th, because it happened after midnight, Egyptian riot police entrapped a friend of mine, an activist friend of mine, and I. Well, plainclothes security forces entrapped us until riot police came. And they beat me and broke my left arm and my right hand, and they sexually assaulted me, and I was threatened with gang rape, and I was detained for 12 hours. Now, I say this all quite mechanically because I've been talking about this a lot, and it's very important for me, especially to talk about the sexual assault, because it's a huge problem in my country and in the Middle East and in conservative societies where women are often shamed into silence. And I always say I speak about this very openly because the shame is not mine. The shame belongs to the men who did this to me, not to me. And so on that day, when I was released, I went to the hospital and had both my arms put in a cast. And for 3 months, I couldn't write because my arms were in a cast. And I say my life changed after that, not just because of this assault. Many people have been assaulted in Egypt. I will tell you more about the street where I was assaulted. But because I understood consequence, and I understood that whereas in the past I used to use words to get my message out, with my arms in a cast for 3 months, my body became the medium by which I got my message out. And when my arms were in a cast for 3 months and I could only use my finger on Twitter, and I'll tell you more about Twitter because Twitter saved my life twice, I understood how powerful the body is, not just its ability to heal, but again, that ability to convey a message. And so I decided, I promised myself, that when my bones healed, and I always say when my bones healed, not when my heart healed, because my heart is not healed. Many people's hearts in Egypt are not healed. It's a very difficult time, and many of us are the walking wounded, but we fight, and we're still alive. And so I promised myself when my bones healed, I would dye my hair red. It used to be jet black. But I would dye my hair red, and I would get tattoos on both arms. So, and I'll tell you about each one of these tattoos because each of them tells the story of revolution and sex that I promised you. On my right hand, on my right arm, is the ancient Egyptian goddess Sekhmet. She's the goddess of retribution and sex. And I always say I want both. And the best way to describe Sekhmet, and this is not planned with the festival team, so any words I use are my responsibility, not theirs. The best way to describe Sekhmet, this warrior goddess of retribution and sex, is that first, she'll kick your ass in and then she'll fuck your brains out. She's very important to me, not just because of retribution and sex, but because she represents a culture that allows women to be angry, because there's so much to be angry about, but we socialize little girls to be polite and nice and quiet. And polite and nice and quiet get you nowhere. And this is a really important message, and that's why Sekhmet was the first tattoo that I got here. She was drawn for me by an American artist called Molly Crabapple, who did a lot of paintings around the Occupy movement. So she's a good friend of mine and also a revolutionary in her own right. On my right arm, I have Arabic calligraphy. I usually wear a lot of Arabic jewelry or calligraphy, Arabic calligraphy on my jewelry because it's my mother tongue, but it's also a way to reclaim it from both the terrorists that you see on your television always speaking Arabic, and also this horrible fear of Arabic. People get pulled off of planes in the United States because they're speaking Arabic. People call the police to coffee shops because they hear young men speaking Arabic. Arabic is my language, and it's a beautiful language. So I was very eager to get calligraphy on my arm, but the words are also very important because on the top is Muhammad Mahmoud, which is the name of the street where I was attacked. On this street, at least 40 people were killed in clashes between us, the revolution, and the police and the army. Boys as young as 12 would end up in the morgue, often unidentified, and so there was a battle between us and the police and the army for 5 days. And so the young boys would go into this battle writing their mother's phone numbers on their arms so that if they died, the morgue could call their mothers. So I often say when I talk about Sekhmet, this is my mother's phone number on my arm. So I've got Muhammad Mahmoud written here, and also the Arabic word for freedom, Hurriya, because we were liberated on this street. Now, the artist who drew this Arabic calligraphy for me is a young Egyptian man called Muhannad, but his Twitter account handle is Pyrovisky, because he's a master Molotov cocktail maker, and he's very proud of this. And he'll often tell you about how he placed a Molotov cocktail next to an armored personnel carrier and how he helped blow up X, Y, and Z. So he's very important to our revolution. Now, I said Twitter saved my life twice. The first time was after I was attacked. So after I was attacked, I lost my phone, which is why I always have my smartphone with me, because smartphones are very important. And 3 hours into my detention in the Interior Ministry, an activist came into the room where I was being held. He didn't know that I was there, but to negotiate a truce with the police. And they weren't paying too much attention to me at the time, so I went up to him and I said, "Can you get me on Twitter?" And he did. And I was able to tweet, "Beaten, arrested, Interior Ministry," and his phone died. I don't know what would have happened to me if his phone had died before I got the tweet out. But I was told after I was released, I was held for 12 hours, that within 10 minutes, Al Jazeera and The Guardian were reporting that I had been detained. The State Department was tweeting me back, saying, "We hear you, and we're working on this." And in 15 minutes, #FreeMona was trending globally. So I'm very lucky. Despite what happened to me, I'm very lucky. If I was an unknown Egyptian woman, if I didn't have a media profile, if I didn't have stages like this, I probably would have been gang raped and killed. So I'm very lucky. So that was the first time Twitter saved my life. The second time Twitter saved me, not my life, but helped me, was in New York in September of 2012. So a year after I was attacked in Egypt. I heard about a campaign to put advertisements up in the New York subway that went like this. It was funded by a hate group. And the wording was, "In the war between the civilized man and the savage, always choose the civilized man, support Israel, defeat jihad." I heard about this ad and I thought, you're fucking kidding me. This cannot go up on the walls of the subway. But it did, and in a way, I'm glad it did because I don't want to ban hate speech. I don't agree with European laws that ban hate speech because I come from a country in which censorship and banning things is used against everybody. But I also believe if hate speech is going to be considered political speech, I must have the right to protest that hate speech. And so I took a can of pink spray paint, and I chose pink because it's often associated with nice, polite girls, but it's my niece's favorite color. I have 2 nieces. One is 5 and one is 10. And they like pink, not because it's nice and polite. They like pink because for them it's feisty. So pink doesn't have to be about princesses and nice and polite. So I bought this spray can, and you need ID to buy a spray can in New York because we have a war on graffiti. We have a war on everything in the US. So I bought this spray can. It was about $5, you have to show ID, and I went to the I went to Times Square subway station, and I had fully intended on spraying racist, but not to cover the words, because this was see-through paint, but just to put my speech over their speech as a way of protesting hate speech. But I don't know if any of you have picked up a spray can. They're really hard to use. So as soon as I pressed the thing on the top, I realized it was not going to work. So I ended up basically spraying bubbles on this ad. But there was a woman from the hate group there who jumped in between me and the ad, and she started defending the ad. And I was like, "Woman, are you defending hate?" And she was like, "Stop it, stop it." I didn't touch her because I didn't want an assault charge, but I was arrested. And I wanted to be arrested. I wanted to be arrested because I understood that I didn't have the money for an ad to go next to this ad in the subway. I don't have $6,000 disposable cash to pay for an ad in the subway. What I do own, my currency, you were hearing about Bitcoin earlier, my currency, again, is my body as the medium. Because I am on TV a lot, because I do have stages like this, I'm obliged to use this platform as my currency. And I knew that when I get arrested, it would draw attention to this ad, and it would begin a conversation that we don't have enough of in the United States about racism, because we're not post-racist in the US. We're not post-feminist in the US. Now, I talked about Sekhmet and the Arabic calligraphy and Twitter in Egypt. Now, Twitter in New York, I had my phone. I didn't lose it. Nobody beat me. But in the holding cell, because I was jailed overnight in New York, I obviously didn't have my phone. Nowadays, they give you 3 calls in jail. So one of my calls I used to a good friend of mine, a veteran feminist called Robin Morgan. She was the founder of Ms. Magazine. And I told her what had happened and gave her my information on Twitter. And she went on Twitter and tweeted all night for me on my account saying, "This is Mona's friend Robin." And the result of that was in the morning when I was arraigned, I had no idea what was going to happen. I'd never been arrested in New York before. But this man walks into the courtroom, long gray hair, wearing a keffiyeh, and he motions to me to meet in the little room where lawyers meet with their clients, and he says to me, "Listen, I have no idea who you are, but last night, 200 people from the Occupy movement tweeted me and said, you have to go represent Mona in her arraignment." So Twitter came to my rescue again. And this same lawyer is representing me pro bono now, and I will stand trial in New York, probably in May or June. I was offered a plea deal, but I turned it down because I want this to go to trial. Because 5 days after I spray painted this ad, a man in Ohio tried to burn down my brother's local mosque. Not because of what I did, but because of hate. And he's in jail now on a hate crime. Hate speech has consequence. And if we don't have the right to protest hate speech, I spoke about consequence earlier. I learned consequence in Cairo, the consequence of protesting a regime. We also have to understand the consequence of hate. And this is where Sekhmet comes in with her love. Because in Cairo, about 3 months after I was attacked, I was asked to write the Egypt chapter of a film called Girl Rising. This is a film about girls and education and how important education for girls is. I spoke about my niece, I spoke about girls, I spoke about nice, I spoke about polite, and this girl that I met blew all of this out the window. This girl called Yasmin, that I profiled for this documentary film called Girl Rising, had not received a single day of formal education. She was chosen because she represented the extreme end of the spectrum of girls who have no access to school or education. She comes from an incredibly disadvantaged family, and she spends most of her day, she was 13 when I met her, she spends most of the day sitting under a bridge in Cairo making tea and selling paper napkins. But just before I met her, about 4 months before I met her, she was raped at the age of 13. So when I went to meet her, I still had the casts on my arm. And I thought, very stupidly, that I should remove the casts because I didn't want this 13-year-old girl to meet me, who at the time was 43, and to think that 30 years down the road, she could still feel that, or she could still face sexual violence, which, as I said, is a huge problem in my country. I thought I'd remove this and I'll protect her, but I changed my mind, and I'm glad I changed my mind because this little girl, well, she was 13, but she's still a little girl, doesn't need anybody's protection. If anything, she helped me, not the other way around. Because as soon as I met her, remember, not a single day of education, as soon as I met this little girl called Yasmin, she said to me, "I'm going to make a deal with you. I'm going to open my heart to you, and you open your heart to me." And she told me everything that happened to her. And then I said to her, "This is what happened to me, and this is why my arms are broken." And the first thing she said was, "Have you taken them to the police? Did you take them to court?" Because she has this, inside her is a deep belief in how she deserves not just freedom, because she's also supporting our revolution, but she deserves justice. Not a single day of education, nobody in her family had taught her about this notion of justice, but she understood that she had been horribly wronged. And so the first thing she says to me is, "You have to take these men to court." And I said to her, "Sweetheart, I have tried, but this is the regime. These are our police and army." And as I said, I didn't need to protect her because she understands, because she's faced these things at a very, very early age, and yet she demands justice. She also demands beauty. And I'm going to end this on this note of beauty, because I don't want my talk to end on not just a sad note, on a hopeless note, because I'm Egyptian. I moved back to Cairo from New York after living in New York for 10 years, and I moved back to Egypt because I understand that right now is the time where we all need it there. It's a big mess, but how else do you fix 60 years of military rule but to go through this mess? So I moved back to Cairo. I moved back to Cairo because I understood the regime attacked me because they wanted to terrorize me away from my own country and to scare other people. I never claim I'm brave. I never claim I'm exceptional. There are many people in Egypt who've suffered much worse than I have. As I've said, I'm very lucky. I'm very lucky to be alive today, but I'm also very lucky in that I can go inside and outside Egypt. At least 16,000 people have been arrested in Egypt since June 30th of last year. And many of them are children, as young as Yasmin. So here's Yasmin's understanding and belief in beauty. Soon after we met, she insisted that we play on the swings because she loves to swing. And I said, I can't, my arms are broken. So she pushed me, and we had a really good time. And then she noticed I was wearing these boots. And she said, I want boots. I said, okay, we'll go tomorrow, we'll go shopping tomorrow. Because I had 3 days to spend with her, but one day to just go out shopping and eat and take a felucca on the Nile and stuff so that we could get to know each other. So we took her shopping, and first on the list was the boots, and she wanted red boots. So we found red boots. See the connection with red? I'm ending on a note of red again. So we found the red boots, and we found her a matching red sweater, and she got a pair of jeans, and she went into the changing room. Now, this girl in the morning had met us in a dark brown coat and a headscarf. She came out of the changing room in her red boots, in her jeans, in her red sweater, and a matching red headscarf. She looked in the mirror, and she was visibly lifted. It's almost as someone had pumped life into her. And we walked out of the shop where we bought her all these things, and she said to me, I had no idea I was beautiful. I love that. Inside her, she understood that she deserved beauty. Inside her, she understood that she deserved justice. Everybody deserves beauty and justice. But sometimes to get beauty and justice, we have to be impolite and we have to be angry, because there are things in life that deserve being impolite and being angry. And this is where Sekhmet comes in again, and this is where I will end, because I know that we have a few minutes for Q&A. This retribution and sex side of Sekhmet, and this freedom side of this arm, this is what the revolution is about. The revolution is about saying no. The revolution is about saying, I deserve justice. The revolution is about, for me, ultimately too, feminism. Because unless our revolutions in the Middle East and North Africa have gender equality as their main pillar, nothing will be achieved. Because we began what I call a political revolution that removed Mubarak from the presidential palace. That political revolution will just keep replacing one Mubarak with another. After Mubarak, we got a military junta. After the military junta, we got Mohammed Morsi. After Mohammed Morsi, we now have Sisi from the military. One man after another. That political revolution needs a social and a sexual revolution that takes it into the home, where girls like Yasmin live, where girls like my nieces live, where all the girls in our region know they deserve justice and beauty. That social and sexual revolution has begun in Egypt, and I don't want you to go away thinking that we're failing in our revolution. Our revolution continues. We continue to fight. The fact that our regime continues to jail activists means that they're scared of activists. These are non-violent, peaceful activists. So don't go away thinking that in Egypt our revolution is failing or stumbling or is finished. It's not. The revolution continues because it's a revolution for justice and beauty. Thank you.
Why not? Why not? Don't be shy. So, Mona, there are a lot of brands here. It sounds rather banal, doesn't it? Talking about brands in this context, but let's try. A lot of them are talking about purpose. You know, Unilever famously trying to challenge perceptions of women in the press and trying to do their bit. But I guess your attitude is that brands are the bad guys, are they?
Not necessarily. It depends on how you use them, I guess. I mean, I said I don't go anywhere without this. I don't go, you know, Twitter saved my life. I don't know if you can call Twitter a brand, I guess. But, you know, I use brands to brand me. I don't work for anyone. I'm an independent writer. And so I'm able to use these. This is my platform. This is my PR agent. I go on Twitter, and I'm the brand. So I guess it depends on how you use the brand. But, you know, I understand Twitter didn't create itself for the revolution. We have to use it, you know. So I think at the end of the day, it's how you use the brands and what you make of them.
Okay. What battles are left to fight, in your opinion? I mean,
in Egypt or in the US?
US, Egypt, the world. When you look at the issues that interest you the most, you know, where does the work need to be done?
I mean, for me, I asked Egypt or the US, and that's why I spoke about the two different times I got arrested, because they're quite different for me. In Egypt, the battle for me is feminism and your right to live as a secular person. I'm a Muslim. I come from a Muslim family. But in Egypt, that's not the issue for me. In Egypt, the issue is feminism, gender equality, and being able to separate religion from politics. In the United States, it's different. In the US, my Muslim identity is primary. I want this to be accepted as a Muslim, and I want the right to protest that ad, because that ad, if that language had been used against any other group in the United States besides Muslims, it would not have gone up on the wall, despite our First Amendment. So in the United States, my fight's quite different. It's racism and being able to openly identify as a Muslim and to fight the bullying of Muslims. In Egypt, feminism and secularism.
Oh, so only a few things then, Mona. Do we have any questions from the floor? I'm sure there are many. We don't have a lot of time, so thrust your hands up quickly. Yes. Hand at the back, thank you.
Alistair from On Device Research. The internet empowers people to give them lots of information and allows them to have freedom. We see that in the Middle East and North Africa, about 10% of people who use the mobile internet are females. How do you get more women to use the mobile internet?
It's actually really important that women go online, and especially in very conservative countries like Saudi Arabia, where their access to public space is very limited. So I think they've managed to create online a space that doesn't exist in the real world. The virtual world is very important for them. I guess you get, I mean, in a country like Yemen, which is just as conservative as Saudi Arabia, smartphones are quite cheap. So I think that smartphones and any mobile technology that is cheap and easy to use is the best way. I mean, internet cafes aren't always the solution because not all women can leave the house. So you need access to a computer or access to a mobile phone or access to a smartphone of some kind. And as I said, even in countries like Yemen, which are very poor and very conservative, I've heard you can buy like knockoff smartphones for as cheaply as $1. But I'm glad you asked about women online, because I think that by going online, I mean, I know some sociology professors who actually call it electronic unveiling, in the fact that Saudi women can go online and arrange a protest to go out driving, which is against the law in Saudi Arabia. And a lot of this organizing is done online because, as I said, they're creating in the virtual world a space that doesn't exist in the real world. But it's very important that they then take it into the real world and not just get stuck in that virtual world.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, Mona.
Thanks, Charlie. Thank you.